Good afternoon and welcome. I'm delighted to be joined by some of our students here to be with you from Yale SOM's classroom here in Evans Hall in New Haven on our campus. My name is Amy Rezneski. I'm a professor here in the organizational behavior area where I teach courses related to teams and organizations, both co-located teams, but also teams around the world. I'm excited to be joined by a phenomenal group of MBA students who are with us here today. And so we've got Jessie, Maya, Amy, and Dia, who will be talking with you about their experiences and insights into the Yale School of Management. We'll cover everything from their experiences here, their experience of the culture of the school, resources at SOM, and the like. We are also very interested in your questions, and so you'll see that from your interface, we'll be taking questions live through the Q&A function. As well, this event will be recorded and will be available to revisit in the coming weeks should you be interested. As well, I've been asked to let you know if you have admissions-related questions, we would encourage you to email them to the admissions team at mba.admissions@yale.edu. And this will also be made available to you through the Q&A box later in the session. And so to kick us off, I'd like to start by having our terrific panelists introduce themselves to you so that you can become a bit more familiar with who they are and what perhaps brought them to Yale SOM. So can we start with you, Jessie?
Yes. My name is Jessie Dubo. I'm a first-year MBA student here at the School of Management. I'm originally from the San Francisco Bay Area, and I studied international development as an undergrad. My background is in global health. Most notably, I was a Peace Corps volunteer in Ethiopia. And here at SOM, I'm involved in a couple different programs like the MBA Impact Investing Network and Training, the Social Impact Consulting Club, PeriodCon, and I'm also a writer for the program on social enterprise. This summer, I'll be interning at IFC in DC.
Hello, my name is Maya Hoffman. I'm a first-year MBA student here at Yale School of Management. I'm originally from Brazil, and prior to coming to SOM, I studied first chemical engineer, and after I was working as a business development manager in one of our biggest education companies in Brazil, and I will be joining McKinsey Brazil this summer.
Hi, my name is Amy Saltzman. I'm a second-year MBA student here at Yale. Prior to coming to SOM, I worked in international development in the public sector, so both in government and nonprofit, primarily between the United States, the European Union, and China. And since coming to business school, some of the things I'm involved in, I'm a leader for Marketing Club, Women in Management, as well as a student admissions interviewer and a career advisor. And after SOM, I will be going to PepsiCo full-time to work in marketing.
Hi, my name is Dia Sikka. I'm originally from Delhi, India. I spent most of my life, was born and brought up there. Prior to coming to SOM, I had a background in business studies and economics. And here at SOM, I'm involved in a couple of things which involve our One SOM Club, which I will talk more about. It's about international diversity. I'm also a career advisor and a nonprofit board fellow member. I also did spend a year in Africa working in the public sector and social impact space. And post-SOM, I'm going to be joining Bain & Company in New York.
Wonderful. So as you can see, a highly distinguished panel of our first and second year students who have joined us here today, who've had a variety of different kinds of experiences, both professionally, globally, and in terms of sector as well, which I would say is highly characteristic of our student body here at SOM. So I wanted to start sort of with the most obvious question, and while we're starting with this question, we would encourage you to write in with questions that you have for the panel that I'd be happy to pass on to them if you'd like to hear from them on it. So the first question is the natural one, which is, not that long ago, really, even for the second years, you were in a position of having to make a decision about where it was you would go to get your MBA. And so I'm curious to hear from you, in the end, what was it that made you feel like SOM was the right choice for you? So we can start with anyone who'd like to take that first.
Sure, I can start. Well, I knew that coming from a background in international development and global health and wanting to continue working in social impact, it was really important for me to go to a school that offered programs and had a strong alumni network in social impact. And Yale's mission is to educate leaders for business and society, so it was the clear choice. But also, Yale is known for being the most distinctly global school, and so being interested in international development in particular in the social impact space, it was the clearest program for me to choose.
Great. Sounds wonderful. Other thoughts on?
I think I can add something to that. I can mention maybe 10 different reasons of why I'm here and why I've chosen SOM. But in the end, my main reason was the community. I really wanted to be in a community where I would be surrounded by people who have very similar values than I have. And I knew that Yale SOM is this place basically because here I can see our mission in each one of our students. Even if they are going to investment banking, consulting, or to the social space, it's something that I really can see in all of our students, and I'm sure that we are in a supportive community.
Wonderful.
I think also I came from the public sector, but I knew I wanted to pivot into private sector. So for me, having really strong business foundation and skills was really important. So I knew I wanted to go to a school that was strong across those areas. But I also knew I needed a school that would understand how to help me get there within the context of my background. And because we are these quote unquote non-traditional candidates often, while it's a nice moniker to have, sometimes you really want someone who can empathize with where you're coming from and the values and unique insights you might have and what you've treasured about your experience abroad or working between cultures, and to be able to help you translate that into potentially a totally different industry or work environment. And so I found that at SOM, the community and the classes and things seem to really understand how to integrate those two things and have them coexist.
And another thing as well, aside from all of those points, which I completely agree with, is that, coming from India, or countries where you have very straight-laced traditional types of courses, you get into one stream and you continue in that. And I was always curious about trying different kinds of, courses, maybe psychology, maybe a law degree, maybe something in forestry. And for the first time, there was this school or this program that was giving me the opportunity to tap into so many different perspectives and aspects, and they thought that was valuable to your entire education. And that was just very, very important to me as an individual, and something that I thought was something that Yale kept on priding itself on, its integration with the entire sort of Yale College, the access to all of those resources. And I thought that was very, very compelling and a big reason for why I decided to come here.
Wonderful. So it sounds like you all had, both differentiated but related reasons for wanting to be part of this community. And as the questions begin to come in from those of you who are with us today, I want to ask the follow-on question that's really quite natural, which is, well, then what did you find when you got here, right? So what has the community been like for you? Have you found what it was that you were hoping had differentiated this place for you among the choices that you had in your MBA?
Yeah, I think definitely. In terms of what I was talking about, integration with the broader, Yale community, I've been doing things that I didn't think I would be doing. For example, like last year, I did this course, Management Leadership in Humanities. I didn't know what I was getting into. It involved a lot of literature, so we would read stories and books about people who become leaders and sort of understand their journeys. It also involved like this pottery making session, and I didn't think I'd end up doing that. I also did a law school class, and I did attend a couple of forestry school classes as well. So there are a lot of opportunities to engage, and I try to make the most of it. And there are a lot of events also that involve mixing between, social events that involve you mixing with the Yale, the health school, the health department, the Graduate School of Arts and Sciences, the law school. And all of that was definitely an enriching part of my experience. And from the community standpoint, I think when people spoke about the mission of business and society, there's a certain self-selection that happens. And even though people go into completely different streams that might not be typical to society or what people might think is for society, everyone here sort of embodies that in some way or the other, and they express it in like small ways by helping you out through some of your most toughest times during the last couple of years. So I think that's remarkable.
Yeah, I would second that. I just finished my recruiting season as a first-year MBA student.
Congratulations.
And I was really worried about finding people who were nice and who had similar values, as I mentioned previously. And going into consulting, that was one of my fears. I really didn't know what I was going to find with my peers that were also recruiting for consulting. And I was so surprised that from the day one, we were so collaborative with each other. I remember one of the consulting club leaders saying in the first meeting for us to watch, to see our friends and to realize that they were our family and our friends and not our competition, that the competition was outside the door. And this is one example of the many examples that I find here in our collaborative community.
Wonderful. Thank you for that. The questions are rolling in, but I do have to, on the theme that you just brought up, I have to share a story of my own. So from the faculty side, one of the things that I encountered here at SOM recently after I had joined was getting here very early in the morning to teach the first morning class and finding sort of pockets of students throughout the building talking with each other. And I became curious because usually students don't tend to show up much earlier before the first morning class if they can help it. And so eventually asked, so, what are you meeting about and so on, and found out that these were students who had professional backgrounds in particular content area who were of their own accord, spending time with other students who needed more background in this area, or wanted some tutoring, or wanted some additional sort of education in this area, meeting with them to get them caught up or to get them more familiar with areas that they, given sort of students' diverse backgrounds here, didn't have background in before. And that's been a highly normative aspect of the community here at Yale SOM that I think is really quite striking in its consistency, but also in what it has meant to the students who have come here, regardless of whether they're giving the benefit of their expertise to their classmates or are benefiting from that. It's very much part of the norm. So the questions are rolling in, and the first one that I want to ask about. Some of you brought up social impact in your introductions and in your comments. We have a question wondering about the fact that many business schools and schools of management market their social impact opportunities and what's possible for students if they come. Can you talk about Yale in that space? How do you see Yale as differentiating itself with respect to social impact based on your experience here?
Yeah, I can field that.
Sure.
I think there are just a number of really incredible experiential learning opportunities here at SOM. And so we, for example, have the Social Impact Consulting Club. And so that allows student groups to work with nonprofits and social enterprises in New Haven to apply some of the things that you're learning in the core curriculum to helping them address a business issue. And it helps you feel like you're more part of the community around Yale as well. We have the MBA Impact Investing Network and Training, which is almost like a impact investing class because it's fairly structured. But the really cool thing about that is that it's completely real. And so you're sourcing real companies, you're actually talking to investors, and you're pitching to real investors for a real investment for the company that you've sourced. We also offer a class that Maya and I are both in called Global Social Enterprise, which is an elective that's pretty popular at SOM, which allows student groups to work with social enterprises in countries abroad. The country changes, we're working with enterprises in Indonesia to help them solve a business problem and develop some of their management capacity. And so what's really nice is that there are just so many opportunities for us to apply what we're learning in like maybe more traditional business classes, whether it's modeling managerial decisions or like a financial modeling class, to social impact problems. And then we also just have a really strong alumni community and student body interest. And so it's pervasive through every aspect of the school.
Wonderful. Thank you for that.
I mean, we have to mention the internship fund and
Yes.
all of those things that, and that kind of focus that the school has, as well as the loan forgiveness program. I think that's amazing that you get this opportunity to come here and you go and pursue something that you're really interested in, and the school has these resources in terms of financial aid that they can provide you in order for you to go and do that. As an international student, I think that's extremely important because it's so hard. And the internship fund does these activities throughout the year that are sort of geared towards you can engage with the community in so many different ways. In small ways by contributing your expertise. We have this whole week of activities coming up called SOM Serves, which is like focused around the community, and you can contribute money, your time, your expertise. And then all of the proceeds go towards the students and the community as well in order to make a bigger difference. And I think that's just, it's not a one-time thing, it's a year-round sort of an effort and initiative on part of the school and the students as well.
Wonderful. Thank you. We have another question specific to the MPH program, the Master's in Public Health program, but that actually creates a nice opportunity for us to talk a little bit about the possibility of taking electives outside of SOM, which many of you have already mentioned sort of in talking about your paths here. So first, do any of you have any experience with the MPH program? Have you taken any courses over in public health? Just want to make sure, sort of get a sense of that.
My small learning teammate, he's a joint degree with MPH.
It's a joint degree.
Yeah, Avi is, but
Okay. So each year we have joint degrees with the MPH program over in the School of Public Health. And I should say across, whether it's the School of Forestry, the Law School, the Med School, School of Public Health, Drama, Divinity, the number of schools is quite broad. We have joint degree students who are part of the program. And so that very much enriches what's happening sort of both in the classroom but also in the community with respect to people's paths and what it is that they're interested in and are looking to pursue. At the same time, we are a school of management that has endeavored to be the most tied to its university, its home university, as we can possibly be. And so what that means is all of our students, once they're through the core and they're moving into their elective spaces, have the opportunity to take advantage of the kinds of things that you've already heard about from some of our panelists and taking electives over in the School of Public Health or over in any number of the parts of the university. So from the college to the law school to the forestry school. It really is wide open to students to think about how do they want to build a program of study that will help them develop as both scholars and individuals into the paths that they are most drawn to from the point of view of the kind of impact they want to have on the world. Another question that's come up that I wanted to ask, we've heard from an attendee who's here with us today who is a mother and is wondering how Yale SOM supports mothers and families. So thoughts on that? I know in the student body we have several parents and an active partners club and ways in which these kinds of structures are supported and integrated into the school. But I'd love to have our attendees hear from that from your perspective in terms of how you may have witnessed or experienced
I
that.
can speak a little bit. I'm not a mother, but one of my learning teammates is, and so her 4-year-old son is here. And so, like, for example, I think 3 weeks ago, we all went on a learning team retreat to one of my learning teammates' parents' house in Maine, and she brought her son, and it was great. It was free babysitting for her, so that was awesome. But I think that it's really nice because there are a number of social activities, like Guardska, and even actually Closing Bell on Thursdays, or it's kind of the end of the week for business school. You see a lot of kids coming around because there's a lot of activities for them to do. So I think at least from my experience, there's definitely been a way that people feel as though they can integrate their family lives into the school fabric in a way that feels a little bit more integrated. And then in terms of partners, I moved here from New York with my partner, and so he is based in New Haven for the 2 years that I'm here. And he's actually the leader of Book Club for Partners Club, and so he's very proudly wears that badge. But I think that Partners Club every year kind of takes on the flavor of the class that comprises it. So the benefit is that you can really have a chance to sort of shape it in a way that fits your needs. So if there's a lot of families one year, it might be a lot more family events. If there's a lot more single partner or non-family partners, then they might do more like brewery tours and things like that. And so I think that there's just a lot of diversity. I know this Sunday they have a partners brunch, and so they did a tailgate for some of the international partners because it's their first time ever being to a football game. So there's a lot of different ways that I think partners and families can feel part of the SOM experience.
Great, thank you. So the questions are continue to roll in. One of an intriguing one that's just come in for me to ask of all of you is what professional or personal experiences did you have that you felt prepared you for success at Yale SOM, particularly as a woman?
I would actually say that probably the most helpful experience for me was being a Peace Corps volunteer, because I think that the single most developed skill from being a Peace Corps volunteer was grit. And coming here, things were challenging for me. I don't come from a quantitative background, so that was something that I was a little bit worried about, being able to keep up in classes. I think some business schools have a reputation for maybe being a little bit cutthroat or like an old boys club, and so that was also a concern of mine. And so just having sort of like the grit to keep trying and to find the resources that I needed, to ask people for help whenever I needed it. And then the school provided that support, as did a lot of my peers informally. And so I feel like I was able to be extremely successful, even though it was a challenging experience.
Back in Brazil, I worked several years as a coordinator and a manager, or as a leader. And I think that really helped me obtain success here in ELSOM, and not only that, but also to help my peers and especially my learning teammates. I don't think that you had to have had like leadership experiences to come to SOM, because you will have several opportunities here. But I think that was one of the things that I could, made me like contribute more to the.
And to add to that, a slightly more personal sort of passion of mine that develops later on was more around travel or solo traveling. If you are from a country or a community where you've spent almost all your life and haven't really traveled, what ends up happening is when you enter a community that is so diverse, it's like a shock to your system in some ways. So before coming here, I spent a year almost in Africa, which was my shock period, which after I got over, I realized that it was so important for me to start opening my mind up to new ideas and thoughts and ways in which people thought, that coming here was much more easier in terms of, integrating myself with the community that I had, or integrating myself with different people who came from completely different backgrounds and being open to their thoughts and views. So if you want to do something before business school, please travel. I would highly recommend it. And, start putting yourself in uncomfortable situations, because there are going to be so many of those. But you'll get comfortable with those uncomfortable situations. So.
Yes. Great. Another question that has come in that I'd like to put out to all of you has to do more with sort of the timing in your life in which this experience has come. How did you know the time was right to pursue your MBA now?
I think it's a tough question, but for me specifically, I was already a leader in my company for a couple of years. I was already working in that company for 5 years, and I realized that if I wanted to achieve higher grounds in that company, or even to pivot to consulting, I needed to have a business degree. I had several examples in my life of people who had that combo of consulting and an MBA education, and I realized that was my moment.
Mm-hmm. Great.
Yeah, and again, similarly, I think it's one, there is never the right time. You can't always be sure, but you reach this point in your workspace where, for me, learning on a curve is like a steep curve is always important. And the minute that sort of you start feeling like the things you're doing are repetitive and they're not adding too much value to you personally and professionally, that's the minute you realize you need to change something. Now, whether that be an MBA or something else, for me at that point, an MBA, because of 10 different reasons, made sense, but that's when I realized I had to make the switch.
Great.
I'm a little bit older from when I graduated undergrad versus when I came and decided to pursue my MBA. And so I think for me, what I found was, after I'd spent most of my career in China and coming back to the States, I found that a lot of the main stakeholders in public sector that were guiding our strategies or informing what our president was deciding to do actually came from the private sector and had very, very strong business acumen. And so I found myself blocked sometimes with having this. I didn't share the same language as they did in terms of how I was understanding how you evaluate programs, what the qualitative and quantitative metrics of those would be most compelling to getting stakeholder buy-in. So for me, I think it was just wanting to come back to school because I knew I needed to have that other perspective in case I did decide to go back to public sector, or for like now, going into private sector and just making sure I can communicate on the same levels and with using the same kind of language that I was hearing around me.
Wonderful. So this is a fun one, I should say. What has been for you the most interesting course, event, or resource that you've experienced at Yale?
Think for a minute.
So to the person who sent that question in, they're thinking deeply. Because there are so many options, I would imagine, in terms of what they could talk about. But this is a really nice question. Yes.
Voices.
Yeah.
Definitely. I think Voices is like my favorite, not event, but kind of
Experience?
Experience. Yes, experience is the right word here. So every week we have 3 classmates come up and talk for 20 minutes about anything that they want to talk about. It's a small space, so people who come and hear the talk you're not allowed to share anything unless the speaker is okay with it. So it's a safe space for sharing anything that you want to about your personal life, professional life, your fears, your successes. And it's just amazing. There are people you've probably never spoken into in the school, and they have such stories that resonate with you. Every time I leave that room after Voices, I just feel more connected to the community, more enriched and closer, and I think that's just amazing.
For me, was to participate this year in the Yale Women's Leadership Launch. This event was basically a day or 2 days, I think, of we giving back to our community. So the Women in Management Club organized 2 days of classes and experiences, and basically a lot of interesting events with young women from our community here in New Haven. And I got to teach classes for these young women. And it was the most amazing experience ever. And here in Yale is one of these experiences I definitely cherish the most.
For me, I would say the first thing that comes to mind is Period Con, which was a conference about menstrual equity. And I didn't really think that I'd be able to bring a lot of my past life into my SOM experience. And so it was really wonderful for me, having worked on menstrual hygiene management issues in Ethiopia, to be able to contribute to this conference that was put on for the first time by 2 second-year students. And it was kind of framed from the perspective of design and innovation within the menstrual hygiene product industry. And so it was very much a business conference, but it was really fun for me to be able to talk about issues of equity and access and design and feminism in this really amazing space of students and outside speakers who came and attended.
Wonderful.
I really liked Marketing Club. I think that especially one of the benefits of being at a small school like SOM is that you do have a chance to stretch your leadership into areas that you might not come from and might not have any background of, but show a strong ambition and interest in. And so I was able to become a first-year leader of Marketing Club, never having done anything marketing related, but having a lot of curiosity in people and their connections and what drives them. And then that led to me now being co-chair this year. And it's just been great because, for example, we did a resume and cover letter session, and we had what to do if you came from a traditional advertising or marketing background, and then what to do if you're coming from a totally left field background. And so I think that afterwards we got a lot of feedback from students that was incredibly helpful to know how they could really tailor where they wanted to be based on where they were coming from, and not have to hide that part of them or kind of grapple with what they felt might be a conflict in it, and they could really see how they could turn it into an asset. So I've really enjoyed that experience and being able to stretch myself to doing something I didn't think I would be doing.
Wonderful. So I just want to underscore in so much of what you've heard in the comments that were just made in response to that question, that a lot of these events, conferences, even Voices, clubs and so on, are student-driven. So there's an enormous amount of support in the community for allowing students to take something that they're thinking of that they think could make an impact on the community or on the sector or the industry that they're interested in or on their community here within the school, to do that, to enable that to, and in some cases this becomes an institution of something that happens term after term or year after year at Yale. And I think that's very much a hallmark of the culture of the school and what this place is really about. And so from the point of view of giving you an opportunity to develop your leadership and extend it in the areas that interest you most, I think there are a number of opportunities for that here, and many of them are created out of, again, a very supportive environment when perhaps that activity had never even been thought of in the community before. A question has come in: do students interact with faculty outside of class?
Yes, in boot camps.
Star Search.
Oh, yeah. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, WIM doesn't, I guess I should explain the boot camp.
It all feels very inside as we're looking at, like, yeah, there are things that, yeah.
So Women in Management, we do a lot of different events with female faculty as ways to just kind of get to know them outside of school. And so one of the things that WIM has done, I think for several years, with Amy is done a boot camp session followed by desserts and drinks at her house where she's hosted, I think 40 people at a time. And it's just, I went to it last year. I think is it twice a year? I think
We try for twice a year.
yeah, they try for twice a year. And it's just this amazing chance to, get to work out and work up a sweat together and try something new. I'd never done a boot camp type thing before. And then to then be able to be invited into a professor's home to meet her family, her charming children, and just relax and chat with each other and with professors was a really cool experience and something that I know Women in Management really tries to encourage and foster.
Yeah. The internship fund also puts together an auction every year, which helps to raise money from the student body to support students who are working in social sector jobs over the summer. And a lot of faculty will donate really fun activities to the internship fund. So that's one way. And then also another kind of formalized way is that Academic Affairs and Student Life will organize lunches with faculty. And so you can sign up as like a group of, I think it's like 8 to 12 people to have lunch with different faculty members and get to know them. But also I found that faculty members that I don't even have as my own professor have been open to have me come to their office hours and discuss some of their research if that has been of interest to me.
I would underscore that. I think it's a very open faculty from the point of view of being happy to interact with students, to meet with them, to talk about what it is that they're interested in. Someone mentioned Star Search, so there's an annual talent show that showcases the very varied and interesting talents of our students. This year, as a surprise, a number of faculty and administrators from the school worked for weeks to work on a choreographed event, choreographed by one of our students, I should say, who has professional experience in this realm, although we were not professional dancers. And that was a wonderful way to interact with the community and then hang out and see kind of what is it that the students were doing at that event. And the internship fund, which Jessie just mentioned, in my own group of the organizational behavior faculty, I'm involved in at least 2 events that our faculty have donated to the student body that are very much experience-based, where it's an opportunity to spend time together doing a variety of different kinds of activities with either larger or smaller groups. We really value our students. We think that they are phenomenal people who have come from very interesting professional and personal backgrounds and have goals and aspirations for what they want to do with their lives that we have an awful lot of respect for and investment in. And so I think the value of that in our community is expressed by the kinds of things that the faculty seek to do with the students that we've brought here to Yale. So let's see, other questions that I want to make sure we get a chance to get to. Does gender, in your experience, affect either the student experience or the job search in your time here at SOM, and how?
Well, the word affect can be affect positively and negatively. I would say that recruiting for consulting as a woman, I experienced several different situations compared to probably what men would experience. But I was very happy to be supported by several women here in our community and also alumni that were that gave their time specifically to train and to help women navigate through this process. So I would say that I was basically helped maybe because I am a woman and because I was in an environment that they were able to provide help.
Being a part of like women in management, and so last year I was the leader of professional development, and this year for admissions, and that's kind of similar to what Maya was saying. It's been a unifying element. It also allows us to figure out how what kinds of experiences we have that are similar and what kinds of experience we have that might be different and more nuanced, and figure out ways that we can hold events, engage allies, recruit advocates, and figure out a way to make the school experience just more comprehensive and just increase awareness among all of our classmates for when they re-enter the job world. And then from a professional standpoint, I think within marketing, usually there tends to be a pretty good representation of women, but I think as within any large companies, you really are scanning like the top to see who makes it past that sifting mechanism that we all seem to see. And so for me, at least when I was looking at job searches, I was really looking at seeing where some of the SVPs and VPs were and what the gender dynamics were there, as well as when I was at my internship, observing how they were interacting, who was getting speaking time, and that definitely informed how I thought of different employers in terms of a priority for me. I knew I wanted to be at a place that I felt like a gender balance was encouraged and where the value of that was appreciated as well.
Wonderful, thank you. A question has come in. One of the things that is hard to miss about Yale SOM in our materials and in any introduction that you've had to the school is just how global a school it is. And a question has come in related to that, which is to say, beyond the GNOM, which is the Global Network of Advanced Management, our network of schools, if you will, that we're connected with for any number of co-curricular and educational and activities that we do over the course of the year, do you feel that the core and elective coursework is globally minded? And how has the global sort of identity of the school struck you, and how have you experienced that?
I think, I don't know if anybody's mentioned the IE yet, but the International Experience course that we did, that I did in my first year, was definitely a course really oriented around immersing yourself in another country or region and understanding that region better. And almost majority of our class, I think 60 to 70% of our class did engage in IE over, I think we had IEs for 6 or 7 different countries and regions. I went to the Balkans, so Bosnia, Serbia, Croatia, which was amazing experience. I wouldn't have been able to do that and sort of understand about that culture. So that course is amazing, and you should take it. You should, if you don't get to do the Global Network Weeks, which is sort of 1-week immersive courses in collaboration with our network of GNAM schools. So I think that was pretty amazing. And I also personally am chair of the One SOM club here at Yale. And so One SOM is part of student life, which organizes all fun events and activities. And a part of what we do is we try and organize events that sort of are cross-cultural in nature. So we have this international week where we sort of have one day where we have food from across the world, or people putting up pictures and showcasing something about their home country. And I think those kind of events on a more social level also happen across the year, and we try and do that, where people get a chance to really, sort of interact with other people and get to know more about their cultures. And we encourage people to talk about where they're from and, wear their, home colors and, talk about things that they miss or nostalgia in some ways. There's also one really cool thing called an Ask Me Anything panel, which has a bit of a global element to it. So I think we have one coming up, which is Ask Me Anything About Islam. There are a lot of these kind of panels where people really are encouraged to ask any questions that they might have and sort of understand about the global community and engage with it.
Great.
I would also add that throughout the core, the cases that we work with are around different business issues and different like regions of the world. So some of the recent ones we've had are about a like Spanish utility company or a palm oil company in Indonesia, or we had one about a social enterprise that was working in West Africa. And then since you're working with a learning team on a lot of these projects, our learning teams are incredibly diverse. So I think on my team of 9 people, we have 5 or 6 different countries represented. And so that allows us to bring kind of a global perspective to each of these different cases. I would also add that Yale financially supports students going abroad. So we get 10 global studies requirement days. And so when we are doing things like international experiences or the GNAM weeks or what Maya and I did, the Global Social Enterprise class, that is funded by the university.
So I'm glad you brought up GSR, or the Global Studies Requirement. So the international experience trip that Dia had referred to is a part of this. There are any number of ways to immerse yourself and to engage with the Global Studies Requirement, to tailor that to either coursework or a part of the world or a type of experience that for you would be most beneficial and most wise from again, from the point of view the experiences that you're looking to have and the interests that you're trying to pursue. So we have about 5 minutes to go, and this is one of my favorite questions, and I've saved it to this point because there's something, no pressure, but there's something that's potentially profound about this, because though it's not been much time, you really are on the other side, or coming to be on the other side of a pretty profound experience. And from that vantage point, from nearly the end of the first year and nearly the end of the second year, what would you say if you had to weigh in on the following? So, knowing what you know now, what is one thing that you wish you would have known before you started at Yale SOM that you could share with all of the people around the world who are with us here today in this session? So with the benefit of the experiences that you've had, what would you want them to know that you now know and you wish you had known when you were in their shoes?
I know. Everyone feels inadequate about something. I think that especially immediately when you get to school, you're just encouraged often to start getting your networking game on, and so you're really talking about your accomplishments. You've just been through all of these applications you've done, talking about how awesome you are and stuff, but really deep down you're just scared about this new experience. A lot of us didn't come necessarily from a very typical business background, although a lot of us did. And so there's just this odd mix of a ton of different people and perspectives. And I think that sometimes in the midst of trying to put on, your game face and be really positive, you kind of overlook the internal exhaustion and fear that you all have. And so I think some of the times where I've felt the best and that I've gained the most is just those small group dinners or a coffee with a friend where you just kind of how are you doing? And you take a pause and you're like, what, not too well. And you just finally get real and have a conversation, and then they'll share with you. And I just feel like that also empowers you to see the things that you are good at and the things that you want to improve on, but not to feel like you have to be everything to everyone or to yourself or anything like that. So yeah, everyone is to some level inadequate and amazing. Yes. But that's what I wish I would have known.
Right. Other thoughts on?
For me, I think I would like to have known that I would come here to Yale SOM and I was going to be supported in not only my recruiting journey, but also because I was away from home and away from my family and away from my country and away from my language. And I was really supported, and this was one of my fears prior coming to SOM, and I wish that I could say to the past Maya that everything was going to be okay and that I had an amazing community that was going to support me.
Wonderful. Thank you. It's time for us to wrap up here on our side, but I'm glad we ended with that question because in some sense it takes us back to where we started, which had to do with, why SOM, what has the community been like? there really is, we would encourage those of you who have the opportunity to learn more about our community, either in person or through conversations with people who are a part of it, to do so, because there is really something quite special about the nature of the community that is present here in the school that I think is very welcoming of and supportive of students from all over the world, from all kinds of professional and personal experiences, that creates something that to us is very unique and precious, and that we're very interested in both protecting and continuing. And so to know that, that is on the other side of this experience, we very much hope that you will apply and come join us here in New Haven. Thank you. And thank you to our panelists who were phenomenal in sharing their experiences with you. Thanks for being here with us today. Busy in between their classes in the morning and in the afternoon, giving their time to interact with all of you and spend time together in this way. So thank you very much as well. Thank you.